In this lesson, we're going to create a project in which the user enters low and high temperatures for each day of the week. They would click a button and find the average low and the average high, as well as which day was the lowest and which day was the highest. In order to find the low and the high for the week, we're going to use sequential conditional structures in which we'll set the first day to the low or the high, and then compare each day after that to that low or high temperature. And in the end, we'll discover what the high and low temperature is, and we'll also keep track of which day that occurred on, and use that in a message box. So the interface consists of 14 text boxes, which I have labeled TXT Sunday low and TXT Sunday high, TXT Monday low, TXT Monday high, down through TXT Saturday low and TXT Saturday high. And then I also have a button which I've named BTN Stats. Everything else is a label. In fact, the 7 weekday names here are just one label where I press the enter key. I think I put a blank line between just to spread that out a little bit. And then the low and the high, which label, you don't need to name any of those labels. We won't refer to those in code. I'm going to invite you to pause this video right now and go ahead and create a new project in Visual Studio using C# and create this interface and label the items as I have here, and then we'll look at how to code it. Alright, so the way we're going to find the low temperature among the 7 to get this line here, the low for the week was 64 on Wednesday, is we're going to start with Sunday being the low temperature. And I'm going to have two variables. The low will be the Sunday temperature, and the low day will be the name Sunday. And this would be a string in quotes in our code. If we were only looking at one day, of course, Sunday would be the lowest day of the week, and would also be the highest day of the week. And we'll do the high the exact same way. So in doing the low, we set Sunday as the low day, and then we're going to compare, is Monday low temperature, is that lower than the low that we have specified? We're not comparing it to the Sunday temperature, we're comparing it to the low temperature, which at this point is the Sunday temperature. But if that Monday temperature is lower, then we're going to set the low to that temp, and we'll set the low day to Monday. Regardless of whether that's true or not, we're going to then look at the third temperature, that of Tuesday. Is the Tuesday temperature lower than the low? And the low might be the Sunday temperature, it might be the Monday temperature. But if that Tuesday temperature is lower, then we're going to set the low to that temperature and set the low day to Tuesday. Then we'll look at the Wednesday temperature. Is the Wednesday temperature lower than the low? If it is, we'll set the low to that temperature and set the low day to Wednesday. We do the same with Thursday and Friday, and then finally conclude with Saturday. Is the Saturday temperature lower than the low? And the low could be the Sunday temp, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday at this point, depending on what the user has entered into these text boxes. But if that Saturday temperature is lowest, or lower than what the current low is, we'll set the low to the Saturday temperature and set the low day to Saturday. And we'll use that low variable and that low day variable in the third line of our prompt to say the low for the week was 64 on Wednesday. Doing some concatenation. We would do the high the exact same way. Let's take a look at the actual code in Visual Studio. I'm going to double click on my Show Stats button, which we need BTN Stats, and look at the code that I wrote here to make this work. So we have our event handler, which is handling the click event for BTN Stats. I start with some variables, and since the low and the high, we want to have those be rounded off to one decimal place. I want to make sure those are double values. The high and the low temperature for the week can be integer values. And then we want to keep track of what the low day is and the high day, so those would be strings. Now, we've learned earlier that when we get input as text and we want to convert it to numeric values, sometimes things can go wrong. The user might put a letter in one of those text boxes or leave one of them blank, and we'd get an error and it would crash. So I'm going to do this all in a try-catch structure. So in my try, I'm going to take each of the text boxes, and to reduce my code a little bit later, I'm going to simply parse each one as an integer value and assign it to an integer variable. In this case, low sun, high sun, so Sunday, low Sunday, high Sunday, low Monday, high Monday, for the high and low for the Mondays, and so forth. We get down to the low Saturday and high Saturday variables. Okay, so now we've converted all those text boxes into variables that we can use in mathematical formulas. We're ready to do our processing. So I want to find the average low for the week, and the average low is simply going to be the sum of those 7 low temperatures, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, adding those all together. So I do that inside parentheses, so those happen first, and then I divide that by not 7, but 7.0. Well, why 7.0? Because if I just do 7, it's going to give me an integer division. It's going to round it off to the integer. I want to be able to have a double value. Remember, we created AVG low, or average low variable, as a double. So if I divide it by 7.0, the fact that this divisor is a double value will cause the answer to be a double value. Then I'm going to do the same thing for the high. The average high is going to be the 7 high temperatures added together inside parentheses. That happens first, and then divide that by 7.0. That will give us our average low, average high for the week. Now I want to find that low temperature, and I'm going to do that using that flowchart algorithm that I showed earlier. We're going to set the low to the low temperature for Sunday, low sun, and then set the low day to Sunday. And then I'm going to do a comparison of, is the Monday temperature, low mun, less than the low? If it is, then we're going to set low mun into low, and we're going to set the low day to Monday. Now you can have these on 2 separate lines. I wanted to point out though that you can't have multiple statements on one line as long as you're ending each statement with a semicolon. And just to make it a little more readable, that's what I did. What I did here was I simply copied that and pasted. I changed low mun to low Tues, or low Tuesday, changed the assignment here to the low Tues, and the low day, the literal string of Tuesday. And then I just simply did the same thing for Wednesday, for Thursday, for Friday, and for Saturday. And at that point, we have our low day of the week as the low variable, and the low day, the name of that day recorded in our variable low day as a string. I'm going to do the same thing for the high temperature. Now here I did this a little bit differently. A couple lessons ago we learned about ternary conditionals. And so I did this one with using that ternary conditional format. But I'm basically doing the exact same thing. The one thing that you need to be aware of here is I'm setting the low variable and the low day here. I can't set 2 variables in the ternary, so I have to have in each ternary, or each day, I have to have 2 ternary statements. And you want to make sure you change the day before you change the high temperature. Because if you change the high first, then changing the high day and you have this high Monday is greater than high, we've already assigned the high to high Monday, and this would never be true, and therefore the day of the week never gets changed. So remember, the order that you do statements is very important, and in this case, if you did the high first and then the high day on each of these days, you would get the correct high temperature, but it would always say Sunday. I suppose you could do this second, you could do the high day second after the high if you did high mun was greater than or equal to high. That would trigger that as a true expression and would change the day. But I simply did the high day first and then the high, doing the same thing for Tuesday, same thing for Wednesday, looking at the Thursday value, the Friday temperature. And I have an extraneous line here from copying and pasting that shouldn't be here. I apparently had copied and pasted the Friday twice and got rid of one line but not the second one. So let me delete that line out. Doesn't cause any problems by being there, but it's not necessary. And so then finally I conclude with my Saturday, changing the day and the high temperature to the Saturday if it's the highest of the week. And that concludes finding the high value for the week. Now we're ready to output into a message box. And I used a string builder here. You could use a string and just simply do concatenation in a string value. But I used the string builder. I created a string builder object called prompt, creating a new string builder, and the first argument that I pass here is the average low for the week was a literal string, and I'm going to concatenate the avg low variable, casting it as a string with 1 decimal place. I use the N1 here. I'm going to do the same thing for the average high. I'm going to take my prompt and I'm going to append to it a new string starting with a new line character, \n. The average high for the week was, plus avg high.toString, and in quotes in the parentheses N1, so I get 1 decimal. I'm going to append to the prompt again another new line character. The low for the week was, and we're going to convert low to a string. It's an integer, so I won't have any decimals, plus a literal string of on, concatenate that to our prompt, and then concatenate the value of low day, and that is a string. I do not need to convert it. Prompt.append. The fourth line, new line character. The high for the week was. We're going to concatenate the high variable, changing it, casting that to a string. Concatenate space on space. Remember, always put your spaces in so things don't run together if you're creating a sentence structure here. And then we're going to concatenate the value of high day, which is a string. So I now have my prompt built. I can show that in the message box. So there is my prompt string builder object. However, this is expecting a string here, and a string builder is not a string, so I need to convert that to a string. So it's prompt.toString, and then my title with the temperature summary for the week. I didn't bother to put a button. I'll use the default of OK. Now, if something were to go wrong, which is going to happen really up here in our try-catch, but if something went wrong in any of this, then I'm going to catch that exception as EX, and I'm going to have a message box where I'm going to display the message property of EX, and my message box is the title of error encountered. So let me run this again. Our show stats. Average low, average high, 67.9, 99.9. The low for the week was 64. That's the lowest day in here, and it occurred on Wednesday. The high for the week was the 103 and occurred on Thursday. Let's just change this a little bit. Let's make Friday the low of the week. So we'll go down to 63 here. And we'll make Monday the high, so let's make it 104. Show my stats. The average changed a little bit because I took one of the high temperatures up a little bit, and the low went down a little bit. The low for the week was 63 on Friday. That's what we were expecting. And was 104 on Monday. We'll do one more. This time I'll do Tuesday as the low, and we'll say it was 105. And let's set Sunday as the low. I think I said making Tuesday the low. I'm making Tuesday the high, 105. And we'll make Sunday the low of 62. Show our stats. The low for the week was 62 on Sunday, and the high was 105 on Tuesday. You'd want to test to make sure this works for all 7 days for the low and all 7 days for the high, but it appears to do so. But you definitely want to test each day to make sure it works before you would distribute this, or before you would submit it for a grade. Let's do one more thing. Let's assume the user made a mistake. I'm just going to get rid of a value here, maybe the low for Thursday, and click Show Stats. And I am told that the input string was not in the correct format. That's the message of the exception that was thrown, and our title for the dialog box of error encountered. And so it doesn't crash our system, gives us a chance to go back and correct that. Same thing if I typed in, say, ABC or some letter, maybe even with a number. Let's try 98A. And again, I'm told that the string was not in the correct format. So it's catching our errors and keeping our program from crashing and allowing us to go back and correct the problem. And that's exactly what a try-catch should do.